Welcome to Lead Well, Live Whole. I'm your host, Michael Sirmon. Every episode, we'll spend a few minutes exploring the challenges, questions, and realities of everyday life, because success means little if you lose yourself in the process. So take a breath, settle in, and let's spend a few minutes exploring life together. I see you. 3 simple words. A few days ago, I watched Tammy say those words to 3 of our grandchildren. She had a separate conversation with each of them, and she didn't just tell them, I see you. She told them what she saw. What made them unique, what she saw developing in them, the things about their character and personality that made each of them special. And then I watched those kids get up and walk away, and there was a little more spring in their step. Their faces were brighter. You could almost see something different in the way they carried themselves. Nothing in their life had changed. They hadn't accomplished anything new. They hadn't won anything. Nobody had given them anything. But somebody they loved had simply stopped long enough to say, I see you. And watching that happen got me thinking about how many of us go through life wondering if anybody really does. So welcome back to Lead Well, Live Whole. I'm Michael Sirmon. And if you've been listening throughout the season, you've probably noticed that much of the first half is focused on the first part of the name, Lead Well. We've talked about leadership. We've talked about courage and clarity, difficult decisions, responsibility, control, teachability, and some of the things that happen inside of us when we're trying to lead other people well. But then Tammy and I sat down with Dr. Susan Babbitt and something changed. We started out thinking we were simply going to have a conversation with an interesting woman who we'd known for years, who has lived a pretty remarkable life, but somewhere along the way, that conversation became something bigger. We talked about getting older. We talked about the changing seasons of life, and we talked about purpose and family continuing to contribute. And we talked about this idea Susan described so well, disappearing. What happens when you reach a point where it feels like the world doesn't see you quite the way it once did? And after those conversations, Tammy and I kept talking, not here behind the microphone, but just us. And we realized that maybe Susan's conversation had already taken us somewhere we needed to go with the second half of the season. Because this podcast isn't just Lead Well, it's Lead Well, Live Whole. So for the first half of the season 2, we spent a lot of time talking about what it means to lead well. For the second half, we're going to spend some time talking about what it means to live whole. Living whole in your marriage, in your family, your relationships, in your faith, about getting older, what changing seasons look like, being present, finding our purpose, our identity, and maybe even some mistakes that we've made along the way, and probably some things we're still trying to figure out. And some of those conversations really aren't going to just be me talking into a microphone. Tammy's going to join me on a lot of them. Not as an interview, but I think we're just going to talk. After nearly 40 years of doing life together, we've certainly learned a few things. We've gotten some things right. We've gotten plenty of things wrong. And there are still things we're learning about each other, about our family, about ourselves, and about what it means to live a good life. So, Tammy's sitting here with me today. Welcome, Tammy.
Hey, babe. It's good to be here.
Well, it's good having you. And it really does seem appropriate that our first conversation with this new awakening for the second part of the season should begin with something that I watched you do, right? Because, Tammy, when you sat down individually with our 3 of our grandchildren, and you told each of them, I see you, I don't know if you saw what I saw afterwards, but something changed in them, so I want to start there. What made you decide that these words needed to be heard?
Well, I think the reason why I felt it was incredibly important was one day I was just sitting and thinking about the relationship I had with my own grandparents. Yeah. And I think, well, this audience doesn't know, but we have discussed it on Every Mile with You, right, audience, that we both lost our parents and our grandparents while we were especially young.
Right.
And so I was just sitting around one day and thinking, I really wish I could have had those moments where I got to sit and visit with my grandparents and understand what values and what, I don't know, assets that they saw in me as a child growing up, someone that they loved dearly. And, I saw the love that my grandma, my grandpa, on my mom's side, my grandpa on my dad's side, but I never got to meet my grandmother.
Right.
And I always wanted that relationship. There's always been a major void in my life because she wasn't ever there. And so I guess I just wanted to be able to say that if I ever had an opportunity to really sit down with my grandparents, what would they really think about me? What would their opinion or their view of me be?
Right.
And so that's kind of how I came to the conclusion that, and I'm just having a difficult time. Sometimes I'm a writer. I can write my words any day, but sometimes saying my words out loud is a little more difficult.
Yeah, it's funny though, because you talk the way you write, right? So you think probably deeper and more intently than a lot of us do in our lives, and then whenever you talk about it, it flows from you, right? I think you're definitely a gifted storyteller for sure.
I didn't realize this.
No, you do. I mean, when you ask me a question about something and I'm like, yeah, okay. And you're like, no, more than that. Give me more. Right.
Right. Right.
And so I think it's really cool, especially when I hear you talk about your grandparents and talk about your childhood and stuff like that, because it makes me or helps me remember a lot about different things, aspects of mine. Right. Because without that, I would probably pretty much just left that shut off and not even thought about it.
Right.
And then just dealt with those underlying things that bubble up that you don't know why you're doing the things that you're doing. But when you think about the grandchildren and this particular conversation, and in any conversation like this, because you've had it with a lot of people, right? Was there something that you saw in them that made you think, ooh, I really need to tell them this, right? And then you planned it out to have the conversation, or did it just naturally develop and you just spoke it spontaneously?
Well, I think if I really, as you said that, I was thinking, or as you asked, I was wondering, what was it that caused me to come to the conclusion I really needed to talk to them? And although I was, thinking about that about my grandparents, when you mentioned that just now, it dawned on me, I always had parents who saw me.
Right.
They always saw what I brought to the table. And they told me. They didn't just see it, they told me.
Right.
And I guess that's where just recently, as I've been sitting around pondering on life, we're getting older.
Yeah.
We're not, with one foot in the grave, but we are getting older in our years. And so you start evaluating the things that you've done.
Right.
And the things that still need to be done. One of the things that Dr. Susan Babbitt talked to us about was the fact that she started taking evaluation of her life and that she had lived out so much of her life. Well, now once she had lived this part out, what was next, right? And so that's why, this came about before we ever sat down and had our visit with Susan.
Right.
But the thing is that I had already started concluding these same things myself and had started putting them into action. One of the things that's incredibly important to me is to make people understand how much they are valued and loved and seen. And throughout the years, ever since I've just been a young kid, in fact, several times throughout our marriage, I don't even know if you've ever even known I've done it, But I've sat down and wrote letters to different loved ones, every single person that was in our immediate family, as far as your brother, your sisters, all of our nieces and nephews, our children, their spouses. Sat down and told them the value that I saw in each one of them.
Right.
Not that I'm trying to pat myself on the back. That's not it.
It's not about the glory. It's about
it's about the need, my need for them to know that they are seen, they are valued, and they're loved.
Yeah.
But I had never taken that time to visit with our grandbabies.
Right.
And, when they're real little, I haven't visited with the littlest one, but our oldest granddaughter, I'm constantly over the years writing her letters or text or having those conversations with her. And it dawned on me I hadn't had those conversations with the younger ones, the ones that are in the middle.
The middle ones, yeah.
The middle ones. I had not had those conversations. And I fully intend on, I'm always telling the littlest one how amazing he is and things.
Because he is.
He is, just like the others, but I hadn't taken time, dedicated time to purposely do that with each of the kids.
So what were you hoping they would hear beyond what you were saying to them? What were you hoping that they would walk away once you told them specifically what it was that you saw about them?
That there's more to them than they realize.
Yeah.
That they, that someone does see them, that someone does value them. I hope I got that right. I kind of trailed off my mind.
No, you did. You did. Because I think that a lot of times, if we're not careful, we focus so much on the deficit, right? What the kids are doing wrong or what people are doing wrong and that kind of stuff. And it's easy for people to start building their identity around that, and they lose sight of the fact that each of us are really unique and spectacular in a way, right? And that opportunity just to stop and be fully present with them,
right?
And look them in the eyes and say, "I see you.
Right.
This is what I see about you."
Yes.
And you see a lot of relationships, they just kind of drift apart and drift wherever because people stop doing that.
Right.
Right. When you're first married or you're first together in a relationship where your kids are just real young, like our youngest, all you do is really focus on those positive things of it. Right. And then as you get more familiar with people and things like that, it's easier just to kind of pull back on that. And what once was something you celebrated now just kind of becomes an expectation.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I think with me, I wanted each of these young people to experience a one-on-one with me.
Yeah.
I did not want to sit them all in a row and point out their strengths, how amazing they were in front of each other.
It wouldn't be intimate. Wouldn't have been intimate.
It would not have been as meaningful whatsoever. Yeah. I mean, because they hear us tell them all when they're all together time and time again how amazing young people they are all the time. Yeah. I mean, it comes up in just general conversation. Right. But for this particular situation, I had hoped, my absolute hope was to get each one of the kids. You and I are really good about trying to always, when our grandkids come, we try to spend one-on-one time with them when we can. Yeah. It's not always feasible, but we try. And so I thought, I want to have some alone time with each of these kids so that I can talk to them one-on-one and just kind of just share straight from the heart.
Yeah, because if you're not careful, you're kind of lost in the crowd.
Right. Yeah. And so what I did was I had planned to take the kid for a drive.
Yeah.
And with the oldest one, it was time for us to pick him up and get ready to take him to the airport. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've lost time. I planned on doing this earlier in the week. but it was just a very organic, very real, very emotional conversation that I got to have with him. And it was incredibly interesting that I found this out with all three of the grandchildren. And I don't know if I'm veering off
It doesn't matter. No. Conversation.
topic or whatever, but the most amazing thing happened. And I thought it was just, I don't know. I just thought it was interesting because with the first one, we were in the car and we're talking, and he's just kind of doing his thing. I think he's playing with his hands or looking out the window. And all of a sudden, I was trying to look at him drive, the road down the road. And I told him, I want you to know, grandson, that I see you.
Yeah.
And as soon as I said that, he stopped whatever it was he was doing. And he immediately turned to me and he looked me straight in the eye. And I had his attention from the very moment I said, I see you. And I just began to tell him all the amazing attributes that he offers, not only as an older sibling, but as our grandson and as a human being in general, right? And so the next conversation came up with the second granddaughter. And so anyway, so I was having a conversation with her, and I also noticed as soon as I said the words, I see you, oh my gosh. And the fact that both of their faces, now the oldest one, he got a little emotional, and I wasn't expecting that because, first of all, he's a boy, and boys, aren't as easily able to express their emotions usually as well as females. And so, but I remember she just looked at me and like, oh, wow, Granny, you really do see me, and the same thing happened with the little grandson.
Yeah.
He as well. Now, I didn't get to drive down the road with him. I was really wanting him and I to have our one-on-one time, but it came down also to the day because of all of our schedules and everything. It came down to the day right before he got ready to go home. And I'm like, oh no, I'm losing time again.
Yeah.
So I took him out on the back porch and we sat at the picnic table for a while and just visited.
Yeah.
And once again, the exact same thing.
Yeah.
It was not meant to be a science experiment.
No, but it was interesting though. Because you think about it, those are simple words. I see you. But why do you think it impacted them so much?
I don't know. I think because young people sometimes feel as if they are just there.
Right.
And they get lost that with everything and because there's all of them, right? And maybe they perhaps feel one gets more attention than the other, or I feel like perhaps maybe they feel like they're standing behind a curtain and somebody doesn't really truly see them as an individual.
And maybe the sincerity of it, right?
Maybe.
Because it's easy to tell somebody, thank you and move on, or, oh, you're special, really, really appreciate you, and then just walk on. But when you stop and you say, thank you for this, I appreciate when you did this, or because you are this way, and it's very specific to them. And normally when you say, I see you, normally they're getting in trouble.
Right. Oh.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
But instead it's, I see you, and I'm gonna praise what I'm seeing about you.
Right. And I'm not going to go into what I shared
you should.
about each of the grandchildren, because that is just a very, I don't know, it's a very personal. It's just something that was between me and them. It doesn't have to be shared with the world, but I do see value in having this conversation, in talking to others, our listeners, about how there is value in having these conversations, especially when you are lifting another human being up, how much value it not only brings to the table to that other person that's sitting across from you, but it brings great value to your heart,
Right.
and what it makes your heart feel when you see the look on that person's face when they realize that they are valued as not only as a human being, but as, whether it is your mom, whether it is your sibling, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your coworker.
I think you said it right there. They're seen as a human being, right?
Right.
Because mom, if you're not careful, mom is seen as the cook, the maid, the whatever, the Uber driver, whatever it could be. Dad is, in traditional household, I'm the, he's the paycheck guy, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's easy to lose your identity because that's what they see you as. When we first got married, right, and I was in politics and all that, and the kids got into school, for a long time, you were Michael's wife, you were Jonathan's mom, Eric's mom, right? And then we had that conversation at the time, and you're like, I'm a human being here. I'm a person. That is not.
This is true. I forgot about this conversation, but yes.
And it really came home for me when we were talking with Susan, right? And she's talking about disappearing. Children can disappear. They can, they're in the house, they're doing all their stuff, but they can disappear, right? They spend all their time in their room playing the games, do all the stuff. Even if they're there, they're not really interacting, right?
Whatever.
And we know that spouses can disappear in the relationship, and just kind of blend into the woodwork type thing. But what I've seen also in the workplace, very successful people can disappear, right? They're seen as this person or that person, and nobody sees them as a person, right? And you've heard me say many times that, in business, just as in life and your family and everything else, whatever business you're in, you're first in the people business.
You are, yes.
Right? So I think sometimes, for me, I think that sometimes we become so familiar with someone that we categorize them, we push them to the side and don't even really think about it that much. But do you think that's true?
That we categorize?
Yeah, we categorize and we stop seeing them. And instead we see what they do or see what their function is.
Absolutely. I believe, that sometimes people are exceptionally good at what they do. And so that's our go-to guy. We go to him for everything. And we've, or her for everything. And we forget that these people have a life outside of whatever it is that they dedicate their lives to, right? Like, let's say a mom who spends all day long, like you said, is a taxi cab driver, making sure the kids are up and off to school. Perhaps she is the one who is, that does all the budgeting, does the grocery runs, takes the kids, because a lot of times the dads are the coaches, right? So she's the one that's making sure all the kids are taken to the different, ball parks and basketball courts, whatever. Plus she is involved in her church, her community, and somehow and I am speaking from personal experience, she's involved in anything and everything she can to try to enhance her children's lives,
right?
Trying to be supportive of her husband, trying to be supportive of her community and her church. That somewhere along the way she just gets lost in anything, anyone, and every situation in her life that she does exactly what Susan talked about, but on another level. She also disappears. She's just in the act of doing, but somewhere she's disappeared from who she is herself. She doesn't even recognize her own self because she is stretched so thin You know, I mean, I guess there's all different types of aspects of how you can disappear.
Yeah.
Whether you're being overlooked or everybody just expects so much of you that you forget who you are as an individual.
Yeah, that's true. So I remember the first time or the shocked look on the boys' faces when they were younger, and they were pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling, and you and I were going to slip away for a date or something, and they were throwing a fit, and I said, hey, she was my wife long before she was your mom. She was my girlfriend long before, she was my wife. So, mom doesn't lose that aspect of who she is just because she's mom.
Right.
Right. So, we've had 40 years. Right. And in that 40 years, I think we do a decent job of seeing each other. Right. And there's seasons we didn't, but I think we do. But what are some of the things that we do that keep us seeing each other?
Keep us seeing each other? Well, I think we try to check in with one another constantly. When we see that something seems a bit off, we don't just stay quiet about it. We say, hey, is everything okay? And we don't just assume that we're imagining this and then just, go on about our daily lives. Right. We also have, especially this past year, we've done it off and on through different times in our marriage, praying together, doing a morning devotional. But this year, or I guess it's been close to 2 years, we've been doing our morning devotional time and prayer time. And we talk about things. We've always had a good line of communication. Now, there has been a couple of times I can't pinpoint because I don't dwell on things like that. There's been a handful of times in our life together that we both have gotten so incredibly caught up in what each of us are doing, right? That we do, if we're not careful, do start almost losing that true connection. But gratefully, thankfully, and gratefully, we have always tried to be quick to notice and try to put that, nip it in the bud, as Barney Fife would say.
Yeah. I think one of the things that we really do is we drive a lot.
Oh, yes.
And so when we drive, we talk.
Absolutely.
And I think that we're comfortable telling the other person that, hey, when you're doing this, it's really making me feel like this.
Right.
Right. Or I know there's been a few times in the last, 4 decades. Ooh, it sounds a long time when you say that. In the last 2 years that we were, that you were like, hey, you're not hearing me. Right. You're not seeing me right now.
I think we actually had one of those situations just last week.
We did.
We did. Now that you mention it, I had already forgotten about it until you just mentioned it,
Yeah. And I think that the ability to be free in those conversations without getting defensive, right? Helps to generate conversation, right? Because as soon as one of us is defensive, the other one just shuts down or pulls away,
right?
And so we end up not resolving it for a while, and then we basically
that usually just human beings in generally
it is.
I think when one feels like they're being attacked, it is just, I think, human nature to retreat, right? It's either to retreat or it is to go for the jugular.
Right.
And more oftentimes, I feel that people are more apt to retreat because they just don't know how to respond correctly
Right, and it's I think it's termed as advanced retreat, where one's a chance that they want the closure, or they want to have this conversation, and the other one's like pulling away.
Right.
And to be aware of it, I think is a good thing, and there's tools, right, for folks that are struggling, right, and that's an issue with them. There are tools, some listener speaker tools and rules and stuff you can set in place that can help you through some of that. But the important thing, I think, and we learned it early, was to keep talking.
Right.
Because you can eventually work your way through anything as long as you're talking.
Right.
And talking is different than fighting. Talking is different than just making sure that I'm saying what I want to say and not listening to what they're saying.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
Because as you said, right, there's been times we got so busy that we stopped noticing the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And then each of us began to feel like we were being taken advantage of or taken for granted or whatever it may be. And then we made an assumption that the other person didn't care.
Right.
And 100% wasn't that the other person didn't care. It's just that they were just as busy as well. And they get, as humans, we go on autopilot a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's, it can be a detrimental situation whenever we get to a point where when we're trying to finally communicate with the other, when we choose to just assume and we're not willing to hear the other person's side,
right.
That's when it can become detrimental because, one episode, sometimes can be understandable. Second time, but then a third time and a fourth time, it just really starts completely shutting your marriage down or your relationship. It doesn't even have to be a marriage.
Right, yeah.
It can be even in the workplace.
It can be with your kids, right? Because this affects your kids. It affects your employees, your teammates. It affects parents, your friends, right? And for some reason, the stronger they are, the more prone we are to just assume something about them, right? Older people, we assume that they have nothing left to contribute, or we start making assumptions about them. So suddenly we cut off the possibility of anything other than what we assumed about them.
Well, I don't assume that. I always assume there's great value in an older person. I know.
But by we, I mean we as a general collective, not we as in me.
I know, but to me, we can learn countless valuable, just the most priceless information from our elders. And I've always felt that way.
Me too.
I've always felt their stories, the life's lessons that they've encountered, the wisdom that they share from their hearts to ours. If we'll just take the time to listen, my gosh, how that could save us so many decades of heartache if all the people would just listen to their elders.
Right. I agree 100%. But
I understand what you're saying.
But for most of us, it doesn't come natural, right? To slow down and stop and be present and all that. We have to be very focused and intentional about it.
Right.
So what are some things that we can do to actually make us better at seeing people?
To be better at seeing?
Yeah, I mean, do we need to ask better questions of them?
That's a great idea.
Do we need to listen different?
Actually, just try listening.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So many of us, just where am I going with this?
How do we get better at seeing people?
How do we get better at seeing people? Yeah. I still have lost it.
Asking better questions, listening different, not assuming, not focusing on what you're going to say instead of listening to what they're saying. Right? I think that's where you're going. That's what we talked about with Susan. People are so busy thinking about how they're going to respond.
That's exactly where I was going to go. Was that
40 years, baby?
Thank you, baby.
40 years.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. I got to looking at this silly thing and lost what I was doing. But yes, that's exactly where I was trying to go, was the fact that you were talking on your one of your episodes just recently about how So often, if you're not careful, you have to make sure that you stay present, because if for whatever reason you feel as if you're being tackled in a situation, that you're immediately trying to come up with exactly what to say next, and you're not fully engaging in what that person is truly trying to say. And that's what Susan had talked about, be present when you're having a conversation. It's incredibly vital. It's just so vital.
And I think there's two magic keys to all of this. And in that coaching session this morning with one of my clients, that's what I was talking to him about. The first one is slow down.
Yes.
Right. Don't get in such a hurry to rush through the conversation or to rush somewhere else and do something. Right. Because whatever you're rushing to, it's going to be there when this conversation's over.
That's
right. But the second one is be very intentional about what we're saying. Right? Understand the value and the power of words. In this case, he's talking to a manager who's talking to his supervisors, and he tells them about stuff that that they've done, and that hey, you did this is exactly what I want, all that. And I said, well, have you considered saying that's the kind of leadership that we're looking for? Because it reinforces who they are as a leader versus who they are as just a producer of whatever the results are that you wanted. Right. And you want them to be a better leader because the better leader will give you those results. So I think being very intentional about the words we use and about the conversations and even about the listening, right? Now, the episode I did with Dave Trebetowski last year in season 1 was about that superpower of being present, right? Communication. And you can see and hear so much more, right? I mean, last week, right? We're talking about, or maybe it was last week. We're talking about our devotional, and I'm over here behind my computer. Well, I've got all these distractions around me, and I can't listen without playing with something that's right there in front of me.
Right.
So I have to choose to get up and move away from the distractions. I'd be very intentional about it, so I can be present as we're doing it. And conversations are that way, right? I've had bosses that they're on their phone the entire time we're talking about stuff, right?
Right.
Hey, it's important to come down here, fly to Houston, give me this update, and you fly and they're on the phone or playing on the computer the entire time you're trying to give the update. And then you walk away and they did not hear a word you say. They want you to repeat it in an email to them, which you could have just done in the first place.
Right.
Right.
And that just goes right back, or just circling right back around to the importance of seeing others, right?
Yeah.
The importance of seeing them. And because not only is there great value in that person, but you'll start understanding more about yourself and understanding, that when we find ourselves making ourselves, because in the beginning, if you're not that type of person that can really tune in, you start finding that there's a lot more to you than you realize whenever you actually take time to focus and to be present and to invest in the other person. You can actually find great value in your own self.
You absolutely can. The reality is that we have known people our entire lives, right? We can know people for years, and we think wonderful things about them all the time, but we never actually tell them, right?
And it's such a shame that people do that. I'm not that kind of person. There's just something deep within me that feels a need to share with that person that they are an amazing person, and that that they're beautiful, that they are incredibly gifted and talented, and it's just ingrained in me. And maybe it's because I had parents that saw me, and they spoke to me. They spoke my truths to me at times when I didn't even realize they saw things in me I didn't even see. but it was them speaking it out
Right.
that made me, and I feel like if we would be better about speaking out to people what we see in them, that it would help people come more to life.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, once again, remember, they start feeling as if they have disappeared.
Yeah.
Like, and they don't even know what there is that they have of great value that they could even offer those around them.
Well, do you think that often we don't because we assume they already know, right? I know a lot of people. I know a lot of people that, you know, something like, hey, why do you never tell your wife you love her? Right? Well, she knows I love her.
Oh, yes.
Well, no, she needs to hear it, right? Tim Atchison, buddy of mine, great guy. I love him to death, right? I appreciate how amazing he is, how strong he is, and his mind is just,
he has a brilliant mind.
Yeah. And, you know, it's easy just to Tim's Tim and just leave it at that. But to take those times to be present and say, and it makes me very uncomfortable when you do it and you talk about, dude, your memory. I have never seen somebody with a memory like yours, right? Right. But we do that, right? We assume our kids know what we think is special about them. We assume they know that we're proud of them, right? We assume our spouse knows we love them and that we're still pursuing them, right? And that we are still, you know, not just appreciative, but very madly in love with them, right?
Right.
We assume our employees or our teammates know that we appreciate what they do all day, every day, and the strengths that they bring to it. But the truth is, most of us don't, because we are reacting to the assumptions in our mind off of what we think you think about us.
Right.
Right.
Perhaps, you know, maybe, I don't know. Here's a good example. I am generally the type that always does edify people. I try to lift people up, but I walk in my own insecurities a lot in life. And so when we're out in public and things, and a woman or a group of ladies just happen to look over my general direction, for whatever reason, sometimes I go through these major feelings of feeling as if they're talking about me, as if they're making fun of me or whatever. And I know I'm not the only person out there that struggles with this. But here recently, while the grandkids were here, we were at a restaurant, and I don't even know if I shared this with you. But anyway, we were at a restaurant, and this woman that was probably about 10, 12 years older than us. Now, when we have all of our grandkids together, it's extremely hard for them to sit down because they get the wiggles, especially if we've been out and about and doing things all day long.
And plus, they're only all together a couple times a year.
They only get to see each other a couple of times a year, yes. And so, you know, we're sitting there, and it was this older couple, and he had his back to us, and she's watching, and she's looking, and she's like paying attention to everything, but she just keeps looking at me the entire time. Like,
get your kids under control?
I don't know, but that's all that kept going through my mind. Yeah. Is that what she's thinking? I never took into consideration what I was wearing that day or any of that. And later it dawned on me I had a Christian t-shirt on. Maybe that's what she was looking at. Or perhaps she was just, you know, remembering days from when she was younger and they used to have their grandbabies. Who knows? But of course I started feeling extremely just very insecure and not knowing what to do with my feelings. But I thought, I'm not going to let this get the best of me like I do sometimes. And so as we were leaving, I made sure, and I always make sure to try to push all the chairs in. I try to always gather up all the stuff, you know, on the thing. And then I turned around and saw they were still there. I thought surely by now they'd already left, you know. And so as I'm walking by, I see that she happens to look up at me. And I told her, I said, I wanted to tell you your hair looks so beautiful today. And her face just lit up, and I wasn't saying anything fake. Her hair was extremely beautiful. And she said, thank you so much. And I could see that it just really encouraged her day. And I saw in her face once I got up closer that her thoughts of me had no malice whatsoever. It was just my insecurities. Well, I feel like that's incredibly the most important time that we reach out to people, although I do struggle in those times.
Right.
Even though I do lift people up a lot, I still have my moments where I'm just like, how will they receive me?
Yeah.
I could have been fearful and think, what if I tell her her hair is beautiful? Or what if I tell her, oh, her shirt is cute or whatever, and she rejects me?
Right.
Then the insecurities I had before are just going to fall into play even more. But I didn't. I overcame my insecurities and I just spoke positive into her life. And by doing that, I walked away from that brief encounter so encouraged and so...
Because you saw her, she felt seen, right?
Right.
Because it wasn't just, oh, you look lovely today. It was very specific what you really appreciated about her.
Right.
Right. So I know we've got to wrap this up here.
I know.
But with that in mind, right? If anybody listening today, or at whatever point they listen to this broadcast, if anybody listening has had someone pop into their mind that they haven't really seen in a while, what would you recommend they do?
They haven't seen in a while.
I air quoted seen.
Okay, air quotes. Well, the viewers and the listeners can't see that. So, I don't know, man. Just give somebody a call and just say, hey, I've been thinking about you today, and I want you to know that your presence in this world has made a major difference. Just be bold.
Yeah.
Just speak out something you would never, ever imagine yourself saying, because I promise you, and it doesn't have to be those words, but
it does need to be tasteful.
Tasteful?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. So if you're thinking about something about them,
no, I mean bold is in edifying that person, lifting that person up, seeing you're seeing them, right?
Yeah.
Point out to them the things that you see, even if it's just the one thing. If you can just get up the courage to say one thing.
Yeah.
A lot of us are bosses. They are bosses. We don't mean for them to, but they intimidate us so greatly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're incredible leaders. They lead us, they guide us, they help us along the way if we have a good leader, right? If we have a good boss. If you have a good leader in front of you, you're probably not going to call him your boss. You're probably going to call him, I have an amazing leader, that I'm under. You don't refer to them as your boss.
Yeah.
But it's okay to tell, especially if they're constantly coming along and telling you how amazing you are, and all of the things that you're bringing to the company, to your team.
Yeah.
Turn around and express the same thing to that leader, because guess what, guys? Those leaders need to be lifted up as well.
Big time. Yeah. Yeah. You, having been in those roles, if you want somebody who feels unseen, it's that person.
Oh, I'm sure. I am sure.
Yeah. So,
because they give so much and they're pouring you, and they are pouring so much into others' lives constantly, that usually the leader is the one that is taking the rap for all the bad stuff. Anything,
if they're good leaders,
if they're a good leader, they are taking the rap for every single bad thing that goes on, and they're rarely patted on the back. Maybe from the uppers, they might get a few pats on the back.
No, that doesn't come from them either.
I'm just going to say, but it's rare that those that are below them come up and say, hey, man, I can't imagine a better leader than you. Thank you for everything you do for us, that you make us a better team, and
most of the feeling is, what can you do for me now, type thing.
Yeah.
Not what you just finished doing, but what can you do for me now? Yeah. But and you know what's really kind of surprising is how simple this really is.
It really is very, very simple.
But we overcomplicate it because we assume or we make assumptions about people's feelings or thoughts or their reactions or what they may or may not know. But people do gain from somebody seeing them, but we also gain from seeing other people, right? It's a win-win scenario. And Randall Moss, a buddy of mine, used to be one of my bosses. We were talking one day, and he says, you're a do-gooder, and he said, but it's not truly altruistic. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you don't do it expecting you're not going to get anything back. He said, you do it knowing you're going to feel better about doing it. So you get that feel good rush whenever you do that good for somebody else. Yeah. And I really, at first I kind of stepped back and thought, what the world is he talking about?
What the heck?
But then it's true, right? Doing good, saying the right things, saying the positive things, there's an endorphin rush that comes back to you when you do that, when you see them brighten up, when you see the light come back into their lives or into their eyes.
Well, I guess that what you're saying is very true.
So the way he said it, I didn't understand at first, but the more I thought about it, it really did make sense.
So he didn't mean it as a negative.
Oh, no, he didn't. Even in the beginning, I knew he didn't mean it negative.
Right. He meant it as a positive, and he meant that you enjoy making others happy.
Yeah.
And I guess, honestly, that's what I enjoy. I do. It makes me feel amazing knowing that person saw that they were seen and loved.
Right. Yeah. But, let's go back to where we started.
Yeah.
You had 3 conversations with 3 grandchildren.
Right.
You didn't give them anything. You didn't fix anything. You simply took the time to tell them, I see you. And then we're specific about what you saw in them, right? You spoke their future, into their future. And then I had the pleasure of seeing what happened afterwards. I got to see them walk a little bit taller, more spring in their steps, and more light in their faces.
They really did.
One of them actually started combing his hair more. Right. But maybe nothing changed about them in the few minutes, right? You were having the conversation, but maybe just for a moment, they were able to see themselves through the eyes of somebody who loves them.
That's right.
Right. And after everything we've talked about today, I wonder how many people around us need that same gift. Right. Maybe it's one of our kids. Maybe it's one of our grandkids. Maybe it's our spouse. Right. Maybe I see you.
I see
right?
you, babe.
Maybe it's somebody we work with or a friend who always seems to be doing fine, or maybe it's somebody who's getting older and who just has quietly started pulling away and wondering if people still notice that they're there.
That's right.
When we talked with Susan about what it feels like to disappear, I think maybe there's a whole lot more to that than what we dug into with her, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe part of living whole is making sure that the people around us don't disappear.
That's right.
Right. So I think that's what I'd leave everybody with today. Right. Pay attention to the people in your life. Stay curious about them. Notice what they're becoming. Right. And when you see something good in them, don't assume they already know. Stop, slow down, tell them. Right. Because you never know what your words are going to mean to somebody else. And you never know how long it's been since someone has looked at them and genuinely said, I see you. Right? So Tammy, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No, thank you for having this conversation with us. Right? And thank you for giving me the chance to watch all this happen in the first place, because it really was awesome to watch.
Those kids are awesome. Those kids are amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad that I feel honestly that God gave me that prompting, that it was important for them to each feel seen.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you did it. And to everyone listening, thanks for sitting down with us today. I hope these conversations about living whole will give all of us a reason to slow down, look around, and pay a little more attention to the people that we're doing life with. So until next time, lead well, live whole, and don't let the people you love disappear. If today's conversation raised a question you've been wrestling with, I'd love to help. I offer one-on-one coaching for individuals navigating pressure, transition, and important decisions. You can learn more at michaelsirmon.com.